I'd like to introduce myself and then the panel that we've got today on this event. My name is Geraint Cunnick. You might know me, you might have perhaps met me at interview. If you've come for an interview already for the course, or perhaps you've seen some of the promotional material we've been doing about the course over the last year or so. But I'm the course leader of digital photography here at Ravensbourne University London. So welcome to all of you who've come onto the course webinar this afternoon. I've got a few people that I'd like to introduce, and I'm going to just hand over to them and ask them to tell you who they are. And basically, they're all related in some way or other to the course. So they've either graduated from the course, or they teach on the course, or they graduated and teach on the course. So without further ado, I'd like to just ask everyone else to introduce themselves. I'm going to start with Tiana. Do you like to introduce yourself?
I knew that was coming. I knew I'd be first. Hello, I'm Tiana. I'm a technical tutor of photography on the course and recent graduated in July.
Thanks, Tiana. And Tiana's role is that she supports the teaching on the course in that all aspects of things technical is what Tiana looks after and manages. That could be the camera, it could be studio, it could be lighting. She's also incredibly good at supporting students in terms of software, and she's been very heavily involved, particularly in the first year teaching of the course as well. So those of you who are joining the course in September or thinking about joining the course in September, Tiana may well be one of the first people that you'll meet on the course. Okay, I'd like to now ask Christina to introduce herself.
Hello, I'm Christina. I am a portrait fashion photographer. I graduated in 2017.
So Christina is one of our alumni from the course. And Christina, you've graduated a couple of years ago now.
Yes, 2017.
So, 2017. So we're going to ask you in a minute to just show us some of your work and maybe discuss the kind of journey that you've had into the industry since you've graduated.
Yep.
But thank you very much for coming this afternoon. We welcome you back to Ravensbourne today, albeit on a virtual kind of
I'm glad to be there.
Thank you. And finally, Chris, I'd like you to introduce yourself, please.
Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to this webinar. My name is Chris Frazer Smith. I'm a practicing commercial photographer, and I have been sessionally teaching students at Ravensbourne for the past 6 years, which means that I get called upon to come in to teach certain units and bring my experience from the industry that I inhabit as a people and portrait photographer, mainly shooting for the likes of advertising agencies, a little bit of editorial magazine work, and bringing the knowledge that I've garnered over the last 25 years plus since I finished assisting. I went to art college in Wolverhampton, studied graphic design and specialized in photography. Then I assisted, and I'm still running what we call our practice, my photography business, in 2021. And that's my connection with the University of Ravensbourne.
Great, thank you, Chris. And again, thank you very much for coming on to this call this afternoon. Really appreciate that you've given us your time. And just to say that Chris's significant experience and expertise gets used a lot on all 3 years of the course, but particularly in the 3rd year, where we're looking at our students who are moving from being students themselves into the industry. Chris's advice is invaluable, and certainly the client briefs that we do, where we work with specific clients from the commercial world, is something that Chris is handling and will be the kind of bridge into those modules as well. So again, it's very good to have you on the call, Chris. Thank you very much for coming.
Pleasure.
Okay, so that's us. And we sat down and we thought, well, what are we going to talk about this afternoon that's really valid and valuable? And we thought we would kind of start by really looking back over the last year or so. It's been an unprecedented year for the photography industry, for the photography education industry, if you want to call it that, certainly universities teaching photography. And, we've had lots of challenges. We've had some means to adapt to kind of a new way of working. We've had students who have graduated and are now graduating into a changing industry. And, for the last academic year and this academic year, I think our students have produced some extraordinary work, amazing work, drawing on real kind of resilience and creative thinking. But if you're about to start a course like BA Honours Digital Photography here at Ravensbourne, we thought, wouldn't it be interesting to think about how two photographers in particular have looked at the last year and how perhaps their own practice has changed or adapted. And it may also kind of, prompt us to think a little bit about how photography may now develop over the next year to 18 months. What will change? What will be the things that we perhaps will keep from our lockdown experience because it has been worthwhile? But also, what were the things that we're really looking forward to returning back to normal? Look at me, I'm in the photography studio at Ravensbourne. This is week 3 that I'm back on campus. And I didn't realize how much I missed being back on campus until I was back on campus. So I'm very pleased to be back in the thick of things with students face to face. So that would be the thing that I'd want to, look forward now to returning to. But I think Chris and Christina and Tiana may well have different viewpoints or different things to say. And I'm especially excited because Chris and Christina is going to show us their work, their progress, the work that they've been doing over the last year, 18 months, and also how they've been using platforms like Instagram or direct mailers or digital portfolios in order to reach a new audience. So Chris, if you wouldn't mind, can I hand over to you first? And if you would mind just kind of maybe just spending some time with us and just maybe talking through that last year and maybe hint about what you're looking forward to and what perhaps you might want to retain as we move perhaps into a post-lockdown period.
Sure, thank you, Geraint. Yes, I think that for me, the big challenge, and I'm sure that Christina will agree and Tiana will agree on this, is that if your subject matter is predominantly people, then you can imagine the last 14 months has been very challenging, getting close enough to people on either personal project photography, as you might think of it, or commercial photography with clients, simply because nobody wants to catch the COVID virus. So looking back and reflecting on what I feel I've achieved in the last 12 to 14 months is quite interesting, because you can sit around and hope for the best that that this virus was going to pass, or you could just be proactive and get out there and try and shoot whatever you feel you could shoot. I think if you were a food photographer or a still life photographer, then your workflow perhaps would have slowed to some degree, but perhaps not as much as others. Sports photographers, for example, probably haven't been doing much sports photography, but hopefully if they're passionate about their craft, they're working out ways to take photographs and get out there and feed their portfolios. And what you'll discover as young photographers is that your portfolio is the lifeblood of what you can offer people with your photography. And if you're not shooting pictures, non-commissioned pictures, and feeding your portfolio, feeding your Instagram feed, then your voice is not going to be as loud and as heard as perhaps some of the other people out there in what is a very competitive industry, whether you're a fashion photographer, an aerial photographer, a sports photographer, a beauty photographer, etc. So within a couple of, I think within sort of 4 weeks of the pandemic kicking in, and lockdown 1, meaning that we couldn't really go anywhere, and as photographers, we're always interested, aren't we, in traveling, because we feel that if we travel somewhere, we're going to perhaps be more inspired once we get out of our own comfort zone, out of our own community. And it feels a bit more exotic, even if you're going, you know, to the next town 10 miles away. It's a little bit more exotic than the other town that you go to on a more regular basis 5 miles away. So I just thought, well, where is the exotic really? And it's sort of, it's everywhere in a way. So I decided very early on to start looking at my local community and to see how they were dealing with the COVID lockdown, and approached as many people as I could and started shooting portraits locally. So I'm going to share a journey from the beginning of lockdown 1 right up until last Friday when I was shooting. And this all links into the sessional work that I bring into the classroom with Geraint and with Tiana and Christina. So if I just screen share here, what you're looking at is the fact that we were in lockdown. We couldn't go knocking on potential clients' doors with our big print portfolios and saying, look, here's all the new work I've been shooting. Let's go through it and have a look. That couldn't happen anymore. So this is the first PDF I created, this first digital mailer that I did probably back in May, almost 12 months ago. And these are portraits. I'm just going to whiz through these. These are portraits of people in my local community. And all I did was ask them to come up with one sentence that kind of reflected them as a family or as an individual, about how they felt about their present state at that time during the early parts of the pandemic. All shot at a safe social distance, people indoors, people outdoors, people behind glass. There was a lot of glass portraiture going on. And you're shooting these and you're thinking, well, you know, these are quite interesting. And you're working in a new way. You're learning to use a little bit of new technical ways of working. You're using less equipment. You're working on your own for obvious reasons. I don't have any assistants with me. I'm not really using any artificial lighting. I'm not bringing in flash or continuous lighting, trying to get them shot very quickly. So this was a really sort of cathartic thing to do. It kept the creative juices flowing. It kept the lifeblood of my work going, and it created a whole new little area on my portfolio, on my website. And it gave me the opportunity to have the voice and to mail this out to art directors at advertising agencies, picture editors at magazines, and so forth, people who are out there looking at photography and commissioning photography. And certain jobs came through this. I got my first job with the Sunday Observer through this. And it then leads to another area I want to talk to you about on this very quickly. I'm just going to rewind here. How else do you get your voice heard? Well, one of the ways is through competitions as photographers. And let me just stop screen sharing for a minute. And I'm sure that some of you will have heard of the Hold Still project that's been running at the National Portrait Gallery, that's had a lot of press. Partly because the Duchess of Cambridge was the sort of main overseer of it to some degree and promoter of it. And you could enter one picture, and if I just take you onto my website actually no, let me not take you onto my website. Let's just talk about competitions, then it will link back to what I'm talking about. So getting your work out there in lockdown was really really important to make sure that I didn't just sit around doing anything, and then working out how to enter and what competitions to enter is a huge thing for photographers to get your voice heard. And there are literally hundreds of photography competitions out there. Some are free, some are quite expensive to enter. And you need to work out, if you're going to enter photography competitions, is it the right competition for me? Am I shooting the right kind of work for this competition? All these competitions sort of have their own specialisms in their own right. So I'm just going to go through a few here. This is the Taylor Wessing Portrait Prize that's also run by the National Portrait Gallery, a very highly regarded portrait competition. And I've been fortunate over the years to have work in this. This is relatively inexpensive to enter. So this is another way of getting, if you get work chosen in a competition, then, you are getting your voice heard and put in front of an audience that's going to be commissioning photography. This is the Association of Photographers. They run professional photography awards, and they also run a fantastic student photography awards that all of the people in the UK commissioning photography will be very aware of and watching. And there are others. Here's the Pink Lady Food Awards that that clearly specialises in food and is a very specialist set of photography awards. I'll run through these quick. Julia Margaret Cameron. I'm going to put the links for these up in the chat feed in a minute, so you can take these away with you. The International Photography Awards, which is a non-profit making large organisation pushing as much money back into areas of photography around the world and supporting young photographers. The Wellcome Photography Prize, again specialising in a very specific area of image making, and at this particular time in our lives, very poignant and very apt in a way with the COVID pandemic and issues over our own physical and mental health, as well as climate issues. And then the Sony Awards, which is a massive award, worldwide photography awards that's always held in London. And Ravensbourne's been very fortunate over the last few years to have students be shortlisted for the student Sony World Photography Awards. This year, Matthias Garcia, one of our current third-year students, was shortlisted, and there's just a little link here for Matthias. So you shoot personal work, it goes into your portfolio, you can use it for marketing, and then hopefully you can use it for competitions. Let's just get rid of this. I'm close to finishing, but another few minutes. So I'm about to send out the next mailer, and the next mailer is a little bit more sophisticated than the current mailer. It's got rollover links in, folks, so you can click on things and it's a little bit more interactive. I'm a photographer. I'm not a web designer. I'm not a graphic designer. So this is going out at the moment. Here are some portraits I shot on Friday. So back with people, shooting in close proximity, it's just an utter joy. And it's so nice to be back, still being cautious, still being careful, taking lateral flow tests on the day of a shoot, but going back and, enjoying doing what we do best, and in my case, being with people and photographing them. So this is going out, as I say, at the moment. You can click on any of these links and it will take you to the relative section on my website. So it's got to be easy to use, otherwise people are going to get a little bit fed up with it and stop scrolling through it, etc. And so, for example, this picture, as I said, is in the Hold Still book, and there's a little link there directly out of the PDF to the website, and a little bit of background on that. So that's been my journey really for the last 14 months, is to keep shooting pictures. I mean, I can't not shoot pictures because it's just my waking everyday thoughts are about photography, about image making, some film making as well. We cover some motion content as well at Ravensbourne. And had I not done that, I don't know where I would be 14 months on. You know, as I said, it's really crucial that you've got your own personal projects going. And when you become successful commercially, you'll find that the people commissioning photography, they want to see what you're doing. They want to see what you're up to. They want to see your personal works, your projects. They don't want to necessarily see something that you've shot for another client. They're not so interested in that. They're looking for your own vision, your own ideas, something that might be have a little bit of an edge over everybody else, that will help them sell their product or sell more magazines off their shelf if they use you. So I think that's probably enough from me. It all feeds into lots of other social media as well. LinkedIn's becoming very important for photographers and the creative industry. And Instagram obviously is the big one for us photographers. And I know that Christina is going to talk a lot more about that, I think. And that sounds like a good point to stop talking.
Chris, thank you very much. That was really inspiring. Thank you. It's great to see that body of work that you've done over the last year as well, and see it now in its final form. Just to let everyone know that's on the call, we'll be taking questions at the end. So if you've got any questions, you might have got some general questions or maybe some questions specifically for any one of us. We'll certainly be very happy to answer those as we get to the end of the call. But I'm going to now ask Christina, again, if you would like to share a screen with us and just talk us through perhaps what's been happening with you over the last year, 18 months, and how perhaps you've also been looking at how the conditions that we've been working in has maybe changed or affected the way you work as a photographer.
Again, it's definitely the past year has been an interesting one for photography. Like Chris mentioned before, if you were a photographer that used to work a lot with people and teams, you just found yourself at the beginning of the first lockdown thinking, oh, am I ever gonna, not ever gonna, but still, how would I be able to work from now on with all the restrictions we had? So that was definitely a point where I started thinking, how can I go forward with my photography? Just a quick background. Let me just share what I usually shoot. So since graduating in 2017, I mostly worked as a freelancer for shooting fashion, beauty, and portraiture, which obviously involves working with people, and for fashion shoots, teams of people, which obviously was not possible during the last year. This is the kind of the work I used to shoot before. So it's all beauty, working with makeup artists, and makeup art and shooting for makeup artist portfolio, portraiture, shooting for modeling agency, and test shoots with their new models, new faces. Fashion designers, starting fashion designers. Again, this all involves working with people. What I found at the beginning of lockdown, I started to think of how can I pair what I used to shoot with something that I was allowed to shoot during past year, which is product. So the way I reshape my portfolio is by starting shooting products. I always loved to play with lights. I mostly shot studio since I graduated. So having product shots in my portfolio kind of makes sense because I could pair it with my beauty work. I started reaching out to makeup artists or businesses that needed to promote their products on Instagram, because I think we all started using social media a lot more during the past year. Obviously, all businesses have to find a way to get their products out there. So social media online presence would have become a very important medium for them to do that. So I started using Instagram a lot more, I think, the past year. It was just a means for us to connect. I started messaging people a lot more on there. That's just the way, I think, again, that's just a way of promoting. That's what I do to promote my work at the moment. I used to go meeting agents and models and makeup artists that might need photos for their own work, but now obviously because the interaction was limited, it was just social media. I think it was a huge platform for us to connect. And how my work's changed is I started doing a little bit more commercial, let's say, rather than fashion and editorial. So this is the editorial work I used to shoot in studio, and what I do now, it's more pairing beauty and portraiture with products. I know a lot of photographers during the past year felt the need to document their life, because I think because the passing of time was so strange for all of us, a lot of photographers moved into documenting more of their everyday life, just to have a record of everything that happened during the past year. My work doesn't reflect that necessarily, but in a way I kind of like to look back at what I used to shoot 18 months ago, let's say, and what I actually shoot now. What would be, I think, I was just thinking more of what will be the next steps in photography. I think we, as photographers, will have more. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to say it. We will play an important role in creating imagery and content for all kinds of avenues, being advertising, maybe documenting events that people can't really attend at the moment, or there's a limited attendance to them. So the photographer will always, being a photographer and being able to shoot, it will be just a way of bringing interaction and bringing sort of experience to people that can't necessarily be there in person. Not sure what else. That's kind of what I was up to during the past year.
Christina, thank you very much for sharing that with us. Tell us a little bit about how you use Instagram. You did mention that we're all using and looking at social media a little bit more. Was there any specific shifts that you did in order to maybe develop your work further?
So I tried to have my feed almost as a portfolio, and then use stories, because Instagram did a quite major development with stories, and so my feed is almost curated as a portfolio. And then I think for the audience is really interesting to see behind the scenes as well. It helps you get to know you as a photographer and also as a person. So I think it's really important to show that as well. And now stories and IG Live and IGTV, even you can record yourself shooting, you can show them the process, your process, because clients actually like to see what happens behind the scene. And beforehand, they used to be able to be at the shoot. Now, I think that's a way to just show them that show them your process and what would happen from start to finish. So I think that's a good way to use Instagram feed as a main portfolio. It's almost pairing with your website. And then there's lots of other ways to have behind the scenes and all the other interactive bits in stories and IGTV. You can also use stories to, again, interact with the audience. There's lots of different features, questions, you can do polls. It's always good to have that kind of interaction and show them you're a real person. The photographer is a real person, and yeah, it helps a lot if the client gets to know you. I think that was my experience anyway.
That's great. It's something that we do try and stress on the course, the use of Instagram as a professional tool, you know, as much as it's part of our lives in terms of social media. So it's really interesting to hear how you've used that as part of your marketing as well. Thank you very much for sharing your work, Christina. That was great just to see what you've been doing and some really interesting shifts in the way that you've kind of changed your practice over the last year. Thank you.
It's been, it's just a way of continue creating something that you need to enjoy it. And I think photography should be a way of experimenting and growing as an individual and as a career.
That's great. Thank you very much again. Tiana, I'm going to ask you now, in terms of your experiences working within education, moving from being a student into higher education and working within the industry as such, what's been the changes? What have been the things that you've noticed and perhaps you've had to implement over the last 12 months?
Yeah, so in terms of obviously what Chris and Christina were saying, in terms of interacting with people, photography is very much centered around people and working with others. So it's been difficult, not only for students, but also in the industry. Having the studio availability, like Christina was saying, she often worked in the studio, and not being able to work in a studio has been difficult. And especially for students as well, having that studio available at the university. But after the first lockdown and coming into the first term of the this academic year, we developed a hybrid approach in terms of the studio being available that Geraint is in currently. So that was been available on a booking system, and all of the systems have been in place in terms of cleaning and making sure that students have that resource available to them. And during I think it was the third lockdown, which was in term 2, obviously that wasn't allowed to happen in terms of the studio. So when it was eventually reopened again, pushing all the shoots and making sure that the students had that available to them has been really beneficial, especially in creating a safe working environment for them as well.
And now we're at a point where we're welcoming students back onto campus. How do you think that's going? What's the response so far?
Yeah, so it's been great to have more people come onto campus. We've moved, I'd say, majority of the teaching back onto campus sessions, and having them back on campus and seeing each other, because majority haven't seen each other in person for a while, if not for the whole of the first 2 terms. So having that sense of community back has been really helpful. And yeah, you can see this change, and the students are wanting to produce work and use the resources that they have available to them, which they have missed out on using.
Thank you, Tiana. That's a really insightful kind of review, really, of where we are at the moment and what we've been through. One of the things I was going to add, and it's something that Chris mentioned in his talk, was about the importance of competition and collaboration to promote your career as a young photographer. I think we've all been through that. I can speak personally about the competitions that I entered and I won when I first started photography. I know we've all been involved in similar kind of things. And so we've decided we're going to set up our own photography competition in Ravensbourne. It's going to be called Ravensbourne Capture. And Ravensbourne Capture will be sending out information and promotional material from mid-June. And the first year, our topic is going to be Picture Your Future. And it's going to be open to 14 to 18-year-olds, one category, and 18-year-olds plus in the second category. And it's going to be open to pretty much anyone who wants to enter. We have industry sponsorship from Panasonic, and they've donated some extraordinarily generous prizes in terms of cameras. And there'll be a People's Choice Award as well, where people, general public, can vote online for their favorite image, which will then be given a specific award. So we're super excited about running what we hope will be an annual event within the photography department here, Ravensbourne Capture. If you're interested, keep an eye on our website, because we'll be launching the whole press kind of and marketing in mid-June. The other thing that I wanted to touch was really on just how we as a university and a course within the university are helping shape the professionals of tomorrow. It's something that we all discussed in our little talks about the importance of education and that move from being a student to a professional. It's something that we've all been through. It's something that we are very aware of that our students go through as well. And to that end, the other thing that we are starting in September in the photography department at Ravensbourne will be a top-up into the third year. So this is to invite people who perhaps are at other universities, perhaps do a 2-year course, foundation degree, perhaps a HND course, and want to finish the third year at a London university. But it's going to be done remotely. It's one of the things that I think that we've learned over the last year during lockdown is how photography can work online. And so it's going to be quite a unique offer in that people can come and join the third year remotely. And this means that that could be an international cohort. We may have students from the UK, we may have students from overseas, and that would be an opportunity to experience the community of photography at Ravensbourne that many of us have been through and a lot of people really feel is very special, but to do so in a different way of study. So hopefully that will open up to students who perhaps can't attend photography full-time, or perhaps have other commitments. Perhaps they want to work overseas, perhaps they want to do a placement, but can still then study the final year of photography at Ravensbourne. So we're super excited about that. Again, if you are interested in that, we're just starting now to put out information. We've done some couple of social media posts. There's some information on our website about that, but you can get in touch if you'd like more specific information about that award as well. We invited questions from the audience before we came on air. And we have a few that we would just kind of are going to read out. And, you know, we will also have some questions from you as well, if you've got some. I've got a few here that were submitted pre-recording. And what I'm going to do is then maybe ask, you know, individuals to answer them. The first question is, what would you say to someone who is considering a drastic career change from something more academic, for example, into a creative field like photography? Christina, this is kind of your career path, isn't it? Because you joined Ravensbourne after doing another subject study before you became a photographer. Perhaps that's a question that you can answer.
Yes, so before deciding on doing photography, I actually finished a degree in architecture. You'd think that's sort of a creative subject as well. But it's still different. So it was quite a change for me. When I started working, after I finished my first degree, I started working, and that's when I realized I wouldn't be suitable, or that career wouldn't be suitable for me. And it would have been maybe easier if I would have just carried on with it, but I knew that I had to. I would like to work as a freelancer, and I would like to work on something that I actually enjoy. So that's when I started doing photography as a way of almost self-discovery. And then I decided, okay, this is me. This is what I want to do. This is what I like. This fulfills me. So that's when I decided to just go for a 3-year course, and I never regretted it. So I'm sure if you are thinking of doing the change, I think you should definitely do it. It's a good way to progress.
Is the message then follow your heart at the end of the day?
Yes, definitely follow your heart, and you're probably gonna discover a lot about yourself, and it's gonna grow you as a person, because you're getting out of your comfort zone. You're used with doing a certain thing, and then shifting to another career also is a way of growing.
Great, thank you, Christina. Another question that we had, Chris, maybe this is something that I could point towards you. Is it difficult to get into the photography industry after a degree?
I think I don't want to use the term a certain amount of luck is required, but I mean, that's the case for anything in life, I think. Yes, it is very possible, and the sooner that you start to make inroads into the industry itself as a student from within Ravensbourne, by assisting, doing some work experience, trying to work on a picture desk at a magazine as an assistant, etc. It's very much, that really does help give you a confidence and a better understanding of perhaps the specialism that you want to pursue when you do graduate. And when you've got, and you're armed with that experience, it means that doors are going to be a lot easier to open. And, you know, we've seen students in the past who've been doing work experience in their second year into their third year. Those doors have remained open for them when they graduate, and they, you know, to all intents and purposes, are walking into a job in a profession that is very much a self-employed profession, for want of a better description. And you know, there are, if you're not going to pursue your own practice as Chris Frazer Smith or Geraint Cunnick Photography Limited, you know, you want to go and work for an organization that needs the services of a photographer or a retoucher or a producer, then those opportunities definitely exist. But you've got to work hard at it. It's, you know, photography is a hard profession, and if you're passionate about it, that pathway of putting in the hours is easier, because you're enjoying what you do and what you love.
Interestingly enough, I met one of our graduates from last year this afternoon, Ben, and he's now not even a year out of graduating. He's a sports photographer. He's working for an agency called Focus, which is he's one of the main picture editors there. But he's now been given the opportunity to be one of 6 picture desk editors in Wimbledon. So it is possible within a year of graduating, particularly if you have the tenacity and you've got the focus and the determination to make significant inroads into the industry. So it was really useful to catch up with him today and see what he's, you know, achieved so soon. Another question we had, are online courses available for BA Honours Digital Photography? And it kind of links into another question that we've had from one of our attendees, which is to do with, will there be a photography master's or an MA course at Ravensbourne? So I mentioned earlier that yes, we are now starting an online level 6. So the third year of the course can be done online. and that would be open to anyone, as long as you have the prerequisite qualifications and come on to Ravensbourne, and you can do the 3rd year remotely. In terms of a master's course, there is definitely plans to do that. We've just opened the new Institute for Creative Technology, which is a brand new building, which is literally next door to the campus here at Greenwich Peninsula. And we're looking at now at where we go in terms of master's provision. Okay, it may well be that in the first instance, photography will be part of a more specialist offer. It may well be a pathway within maybe a design award or something like that. But certainly, because of the reputation of photography at BA level, and because the way that people are using photography more and more in the more applied areas, I think within the next year or so, we are going to see some form of master's provision at Ravensbourne in photography. Another question that we've had, what are some active ways to get better and perhaps progress your photography? What would be kind of those kind of fundamental tips and tricks? Tiana, I'm going to throw that one over to you. What would you be suggesting? Perhaps somebody who perhaps hasn't come onto a course, or perhaps who's just starting the course, what could they be doing to invest to make sure that their photography starts to develop?
I think it comes with experience and practice and taking loads and loads of rubbish pictures.
Okay.
And to get good, you're gonna have loads and loads of rubbish pictures, and that's just how it is. So keep practicing, and trying to learn from other people as well. You can only learn so much by yourself, and from learning from other people, learning from, for example, other people who are doing photography, that also helps as well.
And that's an interesting point, isn't it? It's one of these things, the more that you do and the more that you learn through perhaps making mistakes, or perhaps just kind of not achieving what you think you want to achieve, you get better. You start to become more confident and perhaps take more risks.
Yeah, definitely.
That's certainly what I think our students would say, for sure. Yeah. Thank you. Another question from the audience today. And it says, where do you see photography going in the next few years? Perhaps, even looking at different genres such as documentary photography. Maybe we can all input into that. Chris, I'll start with you. Where do you see photography going in the next few years?
I think that digital is still relatively in its infancy in regard to the history of photography and image making. I think one of the things that I feel that's come out of the pandemic is the extraordinary voice that photography has had for the world in terms of bringing us into stories, bringing us into the lives of other people, very much through photojournalism to some degree. I think that the way that photography is perceived by the public across the world is so sophisticated now that the old sort of glossy, glitzy advertising campaigns that used to roll out in print form they've gone, and the way that photography is used, whether you're selling a product, whether you're selling, putting across a message that's to do with healthcare, or a brand. I think that it is becoming a lot more, the imagery that's being shot is so much more normalized and accessible. It's less polished. I think there's a backlash against over-retouching pictures now. There's almost it's almost a return to analog, going into the dark room, making your prints, and that's the image. You're not manipulating it. You're trying to have as few filters on photography as possible now. Hashtag no filter, and I think that's really refreshing and really important. It opens up a huge world where you get pigeonholed. If someone needed a picture of a red tomato, they'd want to see a portfolio full of red tomatoes. That's no longer the case. They're very happy to commission people who don't necessarily have red tomatoes in their portfolio, if you follow that metaphor. So I think it's really, really exciting. I think that it's just expanding all the time, photography. You see that with photography books, exhibitions, awards, etc. You know, we as photographers take it for granted because, you know, we're on these all the time, flicking through stuff, whether it's, you know, the Guardian's website and reading a story and looking at photography. And I think the story behind photography, the written word behind photography for us as photographers is really important. People want, and what Christina was talking about on her Instagram feed about things going on behind the scenes, showing a more gentle, softer side of you as an individual, not just being a serious photographer all the time, you know. So I think that it is perhaps, in answer to the question, is it going to be more documentary focused work? I think it is, with a small d, not a capital D for documentary. I think there's going to be a more organic process to the images that we see. And people want to see the truth in photography, whether they're looking at a billboard for Dove soap, or whether they're looking at a, you know, a beauty portrait or a portrait or a whatever. I think there's a lot more of an organic requirement from the audience. They know, they can see when something has got a filter on it.
Christina, what about you? Where do you think photography is going in this way?
I agree with everything that Chris said, and it's really interesting to see that you're not alone on thinking that photography will go in a certain direction. It is, I think, like Chris said, advertising and all content, it's moving again towards more genuine approach. Over retouch images are probably long gone, because people want to relate more with the imagery they're presented with. So I think that's just a result of all of us being isolated. You had to, people felt the need to relate more with others online and through imagery. Imagery is just a way of presenting and relating online. So the content creation, it's here to stay for sure, but it's probably going to shift more towards more genuine and unfiltered approach.
Thank you. Yeah, Tiana, have you got anything to add?
Nothing really to add. I think it's true what both Christina and Chris have said in terms of being authentic and having that element of truth within imagery. I think that's something that's here to stay, and I think that's something that's happened over the pandemic, like Christina was saying, but also is something that people are becoming more aware of, and something that anyway generationally photographers are trying to push more towards.
For my value, I think the Guardian app, more than anything else, and this was actually developed by Roger Tooth, who is somebody that has come and talked on the course more than once. His team developed the need for photography to be seen in the same way as other arts. Lots of other kind of newspapers tried it. Financial Times tried it to a certain extent. The Mail on Sunday tried it. But the Guardian has really raised the awareness of photography in the general population, particularly documentary photography. And I see people generally are much more visually literate now than they've ever been. The idea of documentary photography becoming an equivalent language to the written word is as probably more important now than, say, in the 1940s and 1950s with, you know, magazines like Time and Life. So we are just as happy to look at an image than to read a story about the same, you know, event. And I think that's been really significant. Lots of people now see photography as a viable career. They see photography as a means to tell a story. They see it as a relatively straightforward process because they use a smartphone. And that's where courses like this try and change that ethos. Somebody once asked me, what is the motto of this course? And I've said, it is shoot less, think more. And I think that that's what an education within photography can do, is to still use all these brand new outlets, you know, online, Instagram particularly, various other kind of ways of now using things like TikTok to get your message across, but still kind of have a responsibility of putting, you know, quality work into the world, because there's so many photographs these days and so many photographers that, you know, what's important is that you retain a sense of integrity and storytelling to what you do. The idea that we're all wanting something more authentic, and we've all mentioned this, is so important. It feels like, having had some time to press pause and reflect on the way that we live our lives, we want something much more effective and much more authentic. And I think that's where photography can really play a part. As young photographers graduating and moving into the industry, there's never been more opportunities to show your work. And that kind of develops every year, but certainly in the last 5 years or so since I've been at Ravensbourne, I've seen a huge change in the way that people are able to disseminate their work to, you know, an audience or prospective clients. So I would be very, very positive if I was graduating now about what would be available as platforms to show my work, for sure. And that's been a big change, and hopefully that will continue, because there is now an audience there wanting to see new work. We have another audience question. Tiana, maybe something, or Chris, something you could think about here as well. What's the best type of camera for a degree course? I currently have a Canon EOS 100D, and I would like to stay with a Canon brand.
Well, yeah, my 35 mils are all Canons. I think people always overly worry about the megapixels that the camera is capturing. They need to really also invest in the best possible glass they can put on that camera. A lens is as important, if not more important, than the camera body itself. You can have a very expensive camera body and a pretty cheap lens, and you really are not taking any advantage of the size of the sensor and the pixel capture on that body. So you need to find a happy balance between, you know, whatever your budget is and what you think is affordable, not only for the camera body, but also for the glass, the lens or lenses you wish to invest in. And if you invest in expensive lenses, moving into mirrorless bodies now, then you're going to have those lenses in your arsenal for many, many years. And they will make a difference to the quality of your pictures technically.
Tiana, what would you say? Those are good points there from Chris about investing in lenses. Anything that you'd like to add? Oh, I think Tiana might have frozen there for a second. Christina, what about you? Any advice about cameras to start off a career in professional photography?
I would say again as well to just rather than buying a new body, just invest in a good lens, because the lens is more important than the body itself. You can have the, and obviously the equipment doesn't make your photography. It does help to have an equipment that will help you produce work, but I think that's not the primarily concern when starting photography. Shoot with what you had first, then thinking about investing in a good lens, which are more important than body, and then maybe then, or when the budget allows, go into a newer camera.
Thank you. Good advice, Christina. And Tiana, any advice from you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both what Chris and Christina said, but yeah, always I would suggest, if it's like one of your first purchases, to buy secondhand, and to look at things maybe like MPB. I'm not sponsored, but look at things like that, and to see which camera body you would like, whether you want it to be mirrorless or full frame, to weigh out the options for yourself. But definitely, if you're willing to buy something, have a look, because you can get more for your money if you buy secondhand than you can buying new.
Yep. And that's a good point, isn't it? Because sometimes people choose their most recent mark, you know, then sometimes the one before, which is just as capable, is significantly cheaper, but you can still use the right lenses as well. Yeah, great. So we've come to the end of our allocated time this evening. We've had some great questions from the audience, either pre-submitted or actually live. So I hope that's answered your questions. Just before I round up, just to remind you that if you are someone who's thinking of applying or perhaps has had an interview, we'd be very happy to see you on campus. We have an open day, which is on the 26th of June. And we are hoping to be able to offer a campus tour and also an opportunity to look at the facilities of photography and meet the tutors as well. So date for your diary, Saturday, 28th of June. The link is just now in the chat if you want to follow that through on our website. So only just really leaves me just to thank our panel this evening. I'd like to thank Chris and Christina and Tiana for their input. It's been a really interesting conversation. I've really kind of learned a lot, certainly, about what's been going on over the last year in the profession. I hope you all have too. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact us via the university website, or you can contact me through my link on the website if you need more information about the course, or if you want to take some, you know, ideas or any tips or anything that we can give you about the course at Ravensbourne. We'd be all very happy to respond. So thank you very much for joining. I hope you found it informative, and hopefully we'll see you all soon.